I want to welcome all of our viewers, and I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those that are outside the country. We are really blessed this morning to start out with a remarkable Senator Chris Coons from Delaware. Senator Coons is the sponsor, co-sponsor of a bilateral piece of legislation known as the Countering Threats and Attacks on Our Judges Act. And so, Senator Coons, take it away.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you to all the different judges who are joining us today. Thank you for this wonderful forum and for the focus on speaking up for justice. The rule of law is an absolutely central part of our constitutional democracy, and an independent judiciary that does its job without fear or favor and that rules and that leads the judicial branch of our government is such an important part of our work together. It is horrifying what judges at the state and federal level have gone through. And folks, you will hear some of these examples directly. You will see some of them at today's session. I am the co-founder and co-chair of the Senate Law Enforcement Caucus, and Senator John Cornyn, a former Attorney General, former state justice, is my co-chair, and the two of us did a session just a few weeks ago in the Senate about this bill. As Paul referenced, it has a title that makes it pretty easy to understand. The Countering Threats and Attacks on Our Judges Act is a fairly self-explanatory title.
Even a senator can understand what that's about.
That's true. It would establish a state judicial threat and intelligence and resource center at the State Justice Institute, an institute that was chartered by Congress decades ago and that helps support state judicial systems. There's been escalating political violence that knows no geography or ideology: the assassination of the Minnesota former Speaker, Democrat Melissa Hortman, the attempts on President Trump's life, the attempt to burn down Governor Shapiro's house in Pennsylvania, to kidnap and kill Governor Whitmer, and assaults and threats on the judges who are here today. If you commit your life to serving our nation and to serving in our judiciary, you shouldn't have to think about paying for that service with your life, either you or your family. Let me just briefly talk about this bill. I'm grateful for the broad bipartisan support it enjoys in the Senate today. It is co-sponsored by Senators Moran and Whitehouse, Hawley and Shaheen, Barrasso and Warnock. That is a very broad range of Republicans and Democrats. And last year it passed the Senate unanimously. We've reintroduced it because it did not pass the House. I'm grateful for Congressman McCall and Congresswoman McBath, who are leading it in the House. And I am very hopeful because of the urgency of these ongoing threats to the rule of law and attacks on our judiciary, that we will get it to the president's desk, signed into law, and deliver these additional analytical resources to protect our state and local judges every bit as much as we protect the federal judiciary. So thank you for the chance to join you. And Paul, thank you for your leadership in speaking out about the critical role that rule of law and justice plays in our society.
Senator, I can't thank you enough for being a part of this process today. There's no doubt that in America, we have two guardrails. One is our court system, which we need to protect, and we have the Congress, which you're thankfully a part of, which is also meant to be a protection of our system of justice and democracy.
Absolutely.
Great. With that said, Senator, we'll let you get back to work, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul.
Got it. All right, folks. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you a warning that I'm about to play for you a video. It was generated using, I think, Grand Theft Auto might be the game network it was based upon. And we're going to play this video. It only runs about 45 seconds, but I want you to see it. And then Judge Johnson, who it was directed to, will address what that meant to her. So let's play video if we can.
And look at who we got here. Judge Johnson. Well, to stop her from harming any other children, I think it's takedown time. Execute the child molester so she doesn't hurt anybody else. Judge Johnson, let's bury the hatchet. Judge Johnson, you violated human rights. Child molester. That's the end of all child molesting judges. Execution.
Oh my goodness. Judge Johnson, take it away.
That video is still difficult to watch, especially thinking about my children that saw that on social media. That was 40 seconds of a 3-minute video that was posted back in September of 2023. Child Protective Services had removed this man's children from his home. There were allegations of sexual abuse of a mentally diminished capacity preteen and the son, and I was the judge that handled that shelter hearing and then ultimately began the dependency case. Parts of that video that you don't see, he named me. He talked about my divorce, my remarriage, my name change, my children, where I live, and where I work. And so it was a very scary time for me and my family. It took approximately 5 months before there was a knock and talk to find out if this was someone that was really a dangerous threat to actually come to Florida. And it was just a very trying time. He was
Take a
fine.
pause there for 1 second, Judge Johnson. When you say it took 5 months, did you report this immediately to authorities, what you saw?
I immediately reported it that evening to the FBI, to my local sheriff, and to FDLE. FBI agent very correctly told me this is a state issue. It's not a federal issue. I spoke with the FDLE. The FDLE agent said that he would look into it. I do believe he did look into it, but the response that I got was, Judge, it's usually the ones that bark don't bite. And so thankfully I had friends that had retired U.S. Marshals that were their friends and my local sheriff, and they worked together to help me develop a plan to keep my family safe. But there was nowhere to report it to really other than my local sheriff's office, which is very rural. And I would say that most sheriff's offices, at least half in the state of Florida and many across our nation, are very rural.
So, by the way,
But
just pulling together Senator Coons, the legislation would actually prevent the putting this under the rug. It would provide resources to states to investigate exactly what happened here, right?
Absolutely. Our local sheriff's office is not going to have a judicial threat assessment team. Our population is 17,000. We're not going to have analysts like the public sees when they watch CSI. And so the thing that the senator was talking about and what the state of Florida is working for with our judicial security work group that the Supreme Court set up is to come up with those types of things to be able to assist law enforcement. He was ultimately arrested on a written or electronic threat to kill, which is a second-degree felony in Florida. He went to trial in November of 2024. Of course, not in Dixie County. It had to be removed because I was the victim, and most people know your local county judge in rural areas. And so he was convicted. The jury was out 19 minutes. He was sentenced to the maximum in Florida, which for that charge, which was 15 years in the Department of Corrections. And so I'm very happy to be a part of Speak Up for Justice and to see our state and our nation looking at ways to protect the judiciary and to get the resources that we need to analyze threats and to be able to assist judges that are going through this.
And that's a good segue into this. You are with a population of 17,500 citizens at your jurisdiction, right?
Yes, sir.
And now we're going to go to Judge Kelly, who's got 3.5 million people under her watch. And Judge Kelly, what happened to you?
Well, several things happened to me just this year. I'll talk about one that involves cyber stalking. So I presided over a case that involved cyber stalking, and the litigant that lost said to me, "You're going to see what happens to you now." And I asked her, "What does that mean?" And she said, "You're going to see very soon what it means." She then left. I continued on with my court cases and got back to my office, turned on to start to look through my emails and to see that there were 10,000 emails. I never get 10,000 emails in a few hours. I called our IT. I said, "Something's wrong. Somebody's gotten into my computer." They looked at it. They shut it down. We turned it back on. There were now 50,000 emails. They shut it down again. They said I should manually try to go through and delete and block, the emails that came in. I went home. I was up for 6 hours, couldn't even get through all of them, but did my best job. The next morning, back to work, email back on. We were up to about 100,000. So we had to shut it down. They could not find out where it came from. They were looking. And basically, my entire court got shut down. I couldn't receive emails from anybody. They had to delete all of them. I have no idea which emails I missed. My work was totally impacted. Then the next day, I received an alert from a credit card and my American Airlines account, suspicious activity. And I called up American Airlines, and somebody had gone in and taken all my miles, credits that I had, and had booked tickets in other names. That was all depleted. Their fraud department looked into it. They said they couldn't determine who did it, but I had to set up all new passwords and email addresses. The same thing happened with my credit cards. That took me hours to go through every single account, from Amazon to credit cards to everything in my life, and reset everything. So it was really impactful in terms of my life and my work.
Well, we have really two things going on. One was the cyber issues with your American Airlines and with your other online activities. Let's talk a little bit about the personal side and what happened to you on a personal level.
Well, you don't. Personally, I couldn't really interact with any friends or family. I had to have everything shut down. I've spent hours trying to correct this. And even after it was corrected, it's still things kept coming in. It just took hours and hours of my time, and, makes me fearful. I'm still always looking. Did that person come back? Are they going to try again? They're out there. They didn't get charged because nobody could prove it was her. And, you just wonder, when's it going to happen again? Is it going to happen again?
Thank you. And so we would transfer from the East Coast of the United States to the West Coast. Judge Ibarra. Judge Ibarra is up in Santa Clara County, where she sits as a Superior Court judge. And the California court system is the largest court system in the entire world. And so, Judge Ibarra, tell us about what's happening in California.
So the bane of our existence is really the free access to home addresses of everybody. If you own your home, we're a public record state. So my interns and I did just a little research. We went to the assessors and the recorder's office in our county to see how fast we could find each other's addresses. Less than 2 minutes. And there's these public stalls where you could do it and nobody knows who's doing it, right? And so this is how it plays out in terms of, I think you wanted to talk about doxing, right? Doxing is obviously the sharing of private information without consent. So myself and about a half a dozen other judges' personal home addresses were shared in public filings repeatedly by one litigant, unbeknownst to us, because this person hasn't even appeared in front of us. And then we had to figure out how to shut that down. Another judge's home address and a sheriff deputy's home address was going around the jail on business cards. And it was just a ton of business cards in the workstations where other inmates are. And then a ton were found in the one particular inmate's cell. So they were just kind of putting this out. It's so you couple that. Oh, there was another story in another county where in one county, a litigant, I'm guessing, went and they put everybody's home address of every judge who worked in that building on a flyer, and they put it on all the public cars parked in the public parking lot. So how this plays out is I took a look at what it means for our court in particular, and in the last year we've had 5 literal threats to kill, 5 literal threats to kill, one 5 explicit, 1 implicit. 4 of them were on women. And one of the most disturbing ones, I think, getting back to the stalking, was that it started out as a romantic email by a litigant on this person's private, not work email account, basically trying to get together with this person. These are all bench officers, right? And then the last one, which was just recently, was, "I'm going to kill you." So And of course, in this county and throughout California, we do have litigants visiting our homes because our addresses are out there. So I just want to say before I wrap up, because I know others have things to say, Mr. Kiesel, Senator Coons, I appreciate the work you're doing on our behalf, and I'm so honored to be here with my brave colleagues that are putting this all forward in Santa Clara, and obviously the state of California. California judges is working. One of our priorities is judicial safety, and we're really working on that piece of keeping home addresses safe if you are a homeowner.
Judge Ibarra, thank you so much for those comments. And look, I think it's interesting, and we're going to get to Justice Márquez in just a second. But if you look around this room, and when we go to the grid view, there's all women. I'm like the token male in this conversation, and that's not unique. And maybe Justice Salas will address this issue in a bit. But I think it's in some ways a uniquely female judicial officer concern. We obviously had federal judges last time, which were mostly men. But this is a unique gathering of individuals to talk about how it impacts women in particular doing a job as a judge or justice.
Mr.
Yes.
Kiesel, can I say one more thing about that? I guess it relates
Yeah.
to the other story.
Only if you call me Paul, I'm fine. But go ahead.
So one of the judges recently has been getting terrific AI videos where they de-age her, but it's still her. And of course, this is one of the threats to kill. It was a similar one to Judge Johnson, where there was a video of a judge getting killed, and then they put her name at the bottom. But the AI part of it was they de-aged her, and they had her doing inappropriate things with other public figures. And because they de-aged her, it is now at home with her, and it's out in the public space, and now and she looks like her daughter. And so now her daughter is getting harassed. And so it's the proliferation and the availability of home addresses, but coupled it with the reach of the internet is a serious security problem for all judges. But as you point out, women judges have bear a lot more of the threat of it. Thank you.
Of course. And so, look, our anchor speaker today is Justice Monica Márquez, and Justice Márquez is the acting Chief Justice of the Colorado Supreme Court. There are 7 justices in the Colorado Supreme Court, and Justice Márquez, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. Again, I'm Monica Márquez. I'm the Chief Justice on the Colorado Supreme Court. I've served as a justice on my court for nearly 15 years, and I became the chief a little over a year ago. I want to just start with the fact that I'm so blessed to work on a very collegial court. We all have deep respect for one another, even when we disagree, which is frequently. And each of us fulfills our duty to apply the law. And we do that without fear or favor and without being swayed by public reaction to the decisions that each of us individually concludes the law requires. But fulfilling that duty can sometimes come at a tremendous cost. A little less than 2 years ago, our court issued a decision that generated a lot of controversy. Our court was divided in that decision 4-3, but the intense public reaction to that decision led to a wave of attacks on all 7 of us. People who were unhappy with that decision did not distinguish between who was in the majority and who dissented. So not surprisingly, our office was immediately overwhelmed with hateful phone calls and voicemails and emails, so much so that it required IT staff to assist us in addressing those. And I spoke to a number of our staff who were going home in tears from all the horrible things that they had to hear. We also quickly learned, has been said by others today, that all of our personal information had been doxed. As a result, many of us received very hateful phone calls and threatening text messages on our personal cell phones. Many of those messages, in certain cases, were overtly racist or overtly misogynistic, overtly referred to sexual violence, were overtly homophobic. Some of our spouses and extended family members received threatening calls and texts. And in one situation, people were actually able to hack into the voicemail of a family member and then leave a profane outgoing voicemail message on that family member's voicemail. Perhaps most disturbing, in some cases, callers were actually able to spoof our immediate family members, such that when the justice would receive a phone call that appeared to be coming from a family member and would respond, it would turn out that that was not the family member, but some angry stranger yelling obscenities. Because our personal email addresses were doxed, many of us found out that we had been signed up for various unwanted subscriptions, including several pornographic websites. We all had to work hard to change our passwords to avoid some of the financial account penetration that has been discussed. And all of us and some of our extended family members received several pizza deliveries. And I know Judge Salas has spoken about these pizzas that have been delivered to judges around the country in her son Daniel's name. Our experience in Colorado actually predated that recent wave. And in Colorado, the pizza delivery has a very specific and different connotation. It's not necessarily tied to Daniel, but rather in 2013, Tom Clements, the executive director of the Colorado Department of Corrections, was assassinated, a hit job from inside the prison, by a person who showed up at his front door dressed as a pizza delivery man. So these pizza deliveries are disturbing because the message is, we know where you live. In one case, a justice actually reached out to the manager of the local Domino's to try to stop those deliveries, and the manager told that justice that they had tried to trace the origin of these phone calls, but they appeared to be coming from the local FBI office. So another example of the spoofing. Several of us were swatted as well. And swatting is, as you've heard, when a person places essentially a fake 911 call about a non-existent threat, but the call is designed, the tenor of the call and the information shared on that call is designed to provoke a very large law enforcement response at a person's home. These can be terrifying. And in one instance, a caller used information that they had gleaned from the internet and social media about the justice's child to place a 911 call that then prompted 9 SWAT officers to barge into the justice's home at night with flashlights and weapons drawn. We had other swatting incidents over the holidays, including on Christmas Day. And in response to other brewing threats, several of the justices were advised to vacate their homes for a few days. So my broad point is that this impact was widespread. It was not just impact to the justices. The impact was felt by our neighbors, by our court staff, by our extended family members, some of them not even in Colorado, and certainly by our spouses and our children, none of whom had anything to do with a decision that was issued by our court. One of the biggest challenges we faced during those weeks was coordinating communication with law enforcement. So unlike the federal judiciary, state judges, certainly not, at least in Colorado, we do not have anything like a marshal service to protect our judicial officers. Judicial officers have to rely on local law enforcement, and that coordination can be very challenging when there are multiple agencies across a large metro area. I'm deeply grateful for the assistance that we ultimately receive from our local law enforcement as well as State Patrol and the FBI.
Well, I'm so grateful to each of you sort of sharing your own personal experiences that have happened. And look, all you're doing is your job. And not only are you attacked, but as you pointed out, Justice Márquez, your family is attacked. And I think it may have been Judge McConnell said, I signed up for this, or maybe Judge Kunauer, I signed up for this, but my family did not. My family is not a target, should never be a target, nor should the judges be targets. And in part, this has become a culturally acceptable. And I hope part of the Speak Up for Justice program will let Americans know the risks that you face in doing the jobs that you're doing, the bravery you have in actually coming forward. I know for some of you, this is not an easy decision to have your voice heard in this way, but it's so critical. Judge Kelly, Justice Márquez, Judge Ibarra, and Judge Johnson for the community to hear what you've experienced individually, because they don't know it otherwise. And
Paul,
so,
and I was hoping to jump in here because
please.
Chief Justice Márquez talked about vacating their home, and we had asked Judge Kelly to talk about the cyber because we wanted to show that these attacks are coming in all different forms. So I think the aim of the planning committee was to really have the judges touch upon different types of attacks. Sadly, there are several types of attacks. But Judge Kelly, I know you're, as much as you feel comfortable, I mean, there were moments in your in recent times where you felt like you were a prisoner in your own home, based on, certain threats that have come to you that may still be ongoing. So again, I don't want to put you under any pressure, but I think it needs to be clear. This is not just an inconvenience, Paul. I happen to do a lot of judicial security talks across the country, and I do hear others that say, well, this is just, unpleasant calls, and an unpleasant or call that is critical of your work isn't necessarily a threat. No, these are all threats, and I think we need to make very clear that when Judge Kelly can't leave her home because of a threat that's been a credible threat investigation. This is not someone unhappy with Judge Kelly. This is a threat. I want to make sure we distinguish between, offensive calls and outright threats to judges, and 9 SWAT officers breaking down a Chief Justice's home. If that justice, and they could have been armed, there are lives here at stake. So I think we need to put this in perspective when we're talking about breaking our silence and talking about the real threats facing judges at the local, state, and federal level. But I just wanted to put that out to Judge Kelly if there was something else she wanted to talk about with respect to her ongoing threats.
Well, yes, it's another case that I have ongoing that doesn't involve cyber stalking, but it involved a litigant who I issued an ex parte risk protection order, which is a red flag type of order against. And he had previously worked in the courthouse, and he was very unhappy that I issued that order. Kind of luckily for me, he reached out to one of the judicial officers that he had worked with and sent some disturbing communication to him, which then obviously was forwarded to me. Fast forward, I had a watch order on my house at 2:00 in the morning. I had a knock on the door. There was an officer there. The officer said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine. Why?" "No reason. We just wanted to make sure you're okay. Go back to sleep." Looked out. There were a couple police cars in front. Went back to sleep. Next morning, 8:00, call Judge Kelly. This is Homeland Security along with court security, the sheriff's office. Are you sitting down? No, but I will. He was by your house last night, but we chased him. He had covered up his license plate, so we couldn't get a clear photo of that, and he took off, and we're worried about you. And basically what happened then is, let's just back up, that this individual had PTSD. He was a trained sniper, hand-to-hand combat expert, and an expert marksman, all highly trained. I had officers around the clock at my home, but they came in, they said, let's get guns, let's get those loaded. You need to carry a gun with you. You need to have a gun with you at all times. I'm not a great shot, I'm being honest. Then, sat down with me and said, the truth of the matter is we can have officers around your house, which we will, but if he wants to get you, he is so highly trained, he's going to get you. And I moved out of my house and stayed out of my house for several weeks. Then luckily had a vacation and was gone for another week. When I came back, I still had court security. That came to an end at a certain point, but I'm still looking constantly. That person was not arrested. They couldn't prove it was him because the license, and there was a decision made not to arrest him. And he's still out there and decompensating. And I personally have to keep my eye on what's going on with him in my office. And we look it up, and, we're constantly seeing what's happening to him now. So every day I still am looking. If I see a truck that looks like his truck, I was told when I came back to my house to keep all my blinds shut, to keep all my doors locked, and don't let anybody know that I'm inside. So that wasn't a great way to live either. I mean, I've kind of stepped out of it and said I have to live, and but that's still ongoing.
Paul, I want to say something, because these state judges continue to serve, even in spite of what has happened in their lives. And we have 4 prestigious state court judges, but there are 4 that are willing to share their stories. And there are so many others. I mean, just look at the numbers. The National Judicial College estimates that there's 30,000 state judicial officers in the country. And according to the National Center for State Courts, state judges handle more than 95% of the litigation in this country, interacting with millions of litigants and members of the public on matters that often involve high emotions and volatility. And that's the point. If someone is watching and wants, what can I do? What they can do, the call to action, is to work with Senator Coons, get the Countering Threats Act passed so that these judges can be protected. Because as you heard, they don't have a U.S. Marshal Service. They're focusing on local law enforcement. And it's only when someone is killed, like Judge John Romer in 2022, in Letcher County, the judge was killed in his chambers, and Maryland Judge Andrew Wilkinson was killed in October 2023. But look at what's happening to all of the other judges. And I thank each of you for sharing your story, and hopefully it will encourage others to get involved, and let's get some change to protect our state judges.
And Paul, I'd like to go back to Chief Justice Márquez, because, we've had an opportunity to talk on and off the camera about sort of the pressure and what it feels like to get it, not only from all different avenues, whether it be in the form of phone calls and spoofing. But Chief Justice, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about like the impact this has on you and your fellow colleagues and your brothers and sisters on the state court and on the state court bench?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I indicated in my initial comments, all of the justices experienced these hateful phone calls, hateful messages, but there were gradations. And it was very clear as time passed that the women on our court were receiving more of that attention, and the flavor of that attention was gendered. It was targeted at our gender. As a person of color and a member of the LGBT community, mine had yet another layer on top of that, with comments that had racial overtones and definitely homophobic overtones. So people understood who we were, they understood the communities we come from, and used that, or attempted to use that and weaponize that membership in distinct communities. As Chief Justice, I will say, I travel around the state. I've had many, many conversations with my trial court judges around Colorado, and the stories that you're hearing today are not unique. I think our trial court folks who are in the trenches every day are experiencing this almost routinely, and it is a deep concern, particularly for our female judges. I am very concerned that it is starting to impact in Colorado the number of people who are even interested in serving on the bench. And that causes me grave concern, because if our judges, first of all, I'll say this, no government official, I don't care if you're a legislator, an executive branch official, or a judicial officer, no one who is operating government should ever have to fear for their family's safety just for doing their job. And if our judicial officers are not making decisions based on the law and the facts in a case before them, but instead are making decisions based out of fear for their family's safety, that means our entire judicial system is going to start to unravel. And that is a concern.
Yeah, violence in any form, we know now from recent events, violence in any form is not acceptable. And we obviously at every point in time need to be mindful that we have to learn to disagree better. We have to learn to be tolerant of differing views, just as Chief Justice you are with your colleagues. You differ, but you're respectful and you respect everyone's opinion on certain matters. I think we as a country need to become more tolerable of differing opinions. We have to learn to disagree better. But the thing that for all of us, and I think one of the reasons that I'm just so honored to be part of this panel is that state judges right now are very vulnerable. Federal judges have at least the Anderl Act that is helping them with their personally identifiable information. And we're blessed to have the Anderl Act. But as Beth said a few moments ago, there are 30,000 judges that serve their states proudly. And depending on where they sit, they are vulnerable. And we need a centralized way of tracking just what these attacks are looking like, who's making them. Information is powerful. And one thing I want to be very clear, Daniel's the pizza doxing, we now know that in Colorado, justices were receiving pizzas and it had another nefarious intent involved there. But we know in Florida, Florida judges received pizzas in Daniel's name. So because this information isn't being tracked, Paul, we don't even know how many judges across this great country have been threatened in the line of duty. And I think that's why these platforms are critical. That's why we need to speak up for justice. That's why we need to really talk about what we can do to help our state judges and justices who are doing their jobs and are being tortured for it in some instances. And you know, I can't tell you, there are, as Beth said, so many judges that reached out to me and they want to talk, but there are restrictions that they have with respect to active cases. And the people that have threatened them are still under investigation and or being prosecuted. But the numbers are probably staggering, but we don't know it because we don't have a central repository for this information.
Well, obviously, Senator Coons kicking off the program today with SB 2397, hopefully will provide that resource that can pull together a national database to get an understanding of what those threats are and how to respond to them. And look, the fact is, it's about the legal community needs to stand up. I appreciate you as judicial officers, your willingness to tell your stories and be here to put more description to it. But it's the lawyers, it's the legal community that needs to really speak out for this. And so next month, on October 23, which will be our next panel, we're going to have some prominent United States lawyers on that program. David Boies from Florida, who was a part of the Bush versus Gore decision with the Supreme Court, will be one of our speakers. We're going to have Mark Garagos, who's a criminal defense attorney. We're going to have Mark Lanier, who's a trial lawyer out of Texas, who's going to be speaking. And then Patty Glazer, who's an amazing lawyer from California, will be one of our speakers, as well as Tracy Love Fett. And Tracy started in 2016 Lawyers for Good Government. L4GG action.org is an amazing resource for people to go to find a way that you can get engaged, whether it's a rally you go to or a petition you sign. And Tracy will be one of our speakers in the October program. We need to talk about how do the lawyers, there's 1.3 million lawyers, right, Caroline? We have 1.3 million lawyers. A lot of them are members of the Federal Bar Association. What can they do?
Right. So I would encourage, I think, to do, so listen to these programs, talk to each other about it, get involved in other organizations. The Federal Bar Association is the Federal Bar Association, and its mission is to support and work with federal practitioners and federal judiciary. But our judiciary division, and there are two past chairs of that division on this call right now, Judge Bloom and I both held that role, has an active state court judge committee on that. And because our interests dovetail and they are the same. While we are the Federal Bar Association, we support the state judges too in these regards, in these efforts. But I join my colleagues on the federal bench in thanking all of you today for coming out and talking about this, because speaking about that and speaking up for justice and talking about the truth of what is going on and how that affects your work and your life is really important. But I think that for practitioners out there, it's getting involved with bar associations and continuing this work and continuing to talk about it and to educate the communities that you work with, whether it's other lawyers or students or the general public, continuing those programs and taking advantage of the programs that bar associations already have put together about civics, about agreeing to disagree about having constitutional conversations and civics conversations in a civil manner is imperative, and learning how to do that and talking about these issues and not keeping them hidden or secret, but making them more and more aware, everyone more and more aware of them is really, really important.
And Caroline, I just, I was struck by the video, and I want to thank Judge Johnson,
Yes.
because, when I see that video, I tear up. I can't imagine what it feels like to watch it again, Judge Johnson, and to know that your kids had to watch that video. And so I honestly thank you for your courage in allowing us to show it and have to sit through it. I mean, it gave me, I got cold chills, and I just want you to know that we all appreciate you coming forward with this video and talking about this nightmare that unfolded, and it unfolded, took 5 months. And I don't know what you felt like living through that time period when you couldn't get a lot of traction with respect to the investigation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you went through, what your family went through?
Sure. I think this thing is to have to show your children someone's picture, and just to say, if you are at soccer practice and you see this person, if you're at the grocery store with grandma and see this person, if you're in church, if you're at school, wherever you are, and just to have to make your children aware to be looking for someone that may be after them or after their parent. There are 30,000 of us, as Judge Bloom said, at the trial court level across the United States. And the majority of the threats come from interpersonal violence and from family law type cases. And those are going to be your state trial court judges that are handling that. And so it's scary to think that it's something that we have to do because of our public service role, and to have to pay attention and not sit near a door in a restaurant or move to the other side of the church where you don't normally sit, and to always be looking over your shoulder and concerned. It's just not a way to live. You quit going out in the public. We in Florida, our state trial court judges are elected. You can't go to the things that you normally wanted to go to unless you know that you're going to have security when you get there. And so it doesn't just affect going to work and coming home. It affects everything that you do. And when I taught judicial security several times the last year in the state of Florida, and I'm in the county judge conference, the circuit judge conference, the judicial assistants conference, Florida Judicial College, and I asked the question, how many of you have received an actual threat, not a video, but just a threat that caused you concern and that you reported it to law enforcement? A third of the room would raise their hand. And I don't think even as the judiciary, we realized how prevalent it was. And so for the culture that we live in that responds in violence to a court case that they don't agree with the judge's ruling, or a political position that you don't agree with, I mean, that has to stop. And we can't live in fear. We want to go, I go do my job. I make the rulings based on the evidence that comes into the courtroom. I unzip the rope, go home, cook supper, take a kid to soccer practice. The same thing that these lawyers are doing, and that our teachers are doing, and that other people do, just normal everyday life. And because of that role that I have, it's threats of violence on my family, and it absolutely has to stop.
And I mean, it's horrifying to know that Judge Kelly was told by law enforcement that she had to be trained to use a weapon and to carry it with her to protect herself. I mean, we should all be shocked that we're just doing our job and we're being told that we have to literally protect ourselves from someone who will take aim, and as the police told Judge Kelly, will kill her. And
I felt the same thing.
Well,
I mean, I think, and that's why it's so critical that, and I'm saying this has been my position for many years since Daniel's murder, is that we need everyone everyone to start being more impeccable with their words. We need everyone to start disagreeing better. We need everyone from the top down to stop using this inflammatory rhetoric that can very well get someone riled up enough so that they create an AI video of them killing a judge, or so that they then create a cyber attack which disrupts the entire court system. Let's not forget, not only did it disrupt Judge Kelly's life, I mean, they had to shut the system down. We're standing in the way of litigants getting their cases heard because one person becomes so enraged that they wreak havoc on the internet and on the court's website. So enraged that we're sending, we're calling, a fake 911 call on Christmas Day. And so that one of the justices from Colorado, when they should be enjoying their family on Christmas Day, such a holy day, right? That they are getting getting advised that there's some kind of fake call. We have to start learning to agree to disagree. And it takes our leaders at every level, political, social, celebrity, all our leaders to start being impeccable with their word, to start, respecting one another's differing views. And that's why it's important for all of us to speak up for justice. That's why it's important for judges to come out. But as Paul, you said, we're limited as to what we can do at the end of the day. But it requires all of us, all Americans, to start saying, no, we don't want to live like this. This hate is heavy. Love is light. We don't want to live like this. We want to do our jobs, and we want to make sure that justice can be done without it being a matter of sitting in a restaurant so I have vantage at the door, or let me put down my blinds, or you know what, I'm not going food shopping anymore. I'm sending my husband or my wife or whomever it may. This is insanity.
So
insanity.
The United States, and Judge Ibarra, I'll get you in 1 second. I will have you. I mean, the United States, one of the hallmarks of this country is its freedom. It's freedom of expression. It's freedom of travel. It's freedom of speech. It's freedom of exercise of what you want to do within limits. And the limits are we've pushed the boundaries. We run the risk of losing our democracy when we challenge the rule of law, when we disagree, worst, not better. It's Governor Cox from Utah who started Disagree Better several years ago. And it's never been more important today than it was when he began this process. And so we need to just be mindful of the fact our democracy is based upon freedoms that we take for granted, and the ability to have you do your jobs and us respect the rule of law is in part what makes America the place for us all to live. Judge Ibarra, go.
So I wanted to follow up on the comments about it affecting our family. My daughter was essentially born into this, and I wanted to share that in a prior life, when I was a federal prosecutor, my husband was a DA. We had a hit on our family, and we didn't find out because of the person telling us. We found out because a confidential informant came in. So like Judge Kelly, we moved out for several years. And so that was how my family was born into this life. It was unsustainable to be living somewhere else and owning another house. But ultimately, fast forward to where we are now, my kids, again, they're not born into this life, carry a card with our Judicial Protection Unit information on at all times, because they need to know who to get help from when they're stuck somewhere. And I just don't think that is, nobody signed up for this. I mean, even if it was just me, I didn't sign up for this. None of these bench officers signed up for this. And I'm sure my kids didn't. And it's pretty, to Judge Johnson's point, it is pretty awful to have to explain these are the kind of rules you got to follow now for keeping safe and keeping yourself safe when we're not here, and your friends safe when somebody comes around. So I want to thank Judge Salas for her work in this area, Mr. Kiesel, your work for this area, and then again all these wonderful bench officers for being so brave, because something needs to be done. And as good as our Judicial Protection Unit is, it's like playing whack-a-mole with all the private information out there and their ability to get to the bench officers, who, by the way, I think most of us don't want to be famous at all. We would prefer for our name not to be out there. So this isn't a situation where we're trying to get on Instagram to get likes, or, you know, that we are celebrities and that the higher our rating, the better our position. This is really just we just kind of came out because we thought we could help do the right thing. We thought we had some integrity to make the right decision, and we try to do it in the most diplomatic way possible. But there's always going to be, when it's not, something comes to court and people can't agree, there's always going to be a disgruntled party, and this is not the way to solve the problem of the disgruntled litigant.
Perfect way to wrap up our program today. Speak Up for Justice is a nonpartisan organization designed really for the protection of our judicial system and for lawyers to have an opportunity to speak up about the importance of our democracy and what we do as lawyers in this country. So my thanks to each of you for your sharing your personal stories today. I wish you all best of luck going forward. We're here if there's anything you need. Judge Salas, Judge Bloom, of course, Judge Mahalchik, thank you for your work on the executive committee, and Judge Ibarra, Judge Kelly, Justice Márquez, and Judge Johnson, thank you for sharing your stories. And Senator Coons is gone, but thank you to the Senate for helping us out here. Be well.
And that's 2379, right, Paul? 2379. That's
Senate Bill 2379, correct. Thanks all.